6, 2024. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Farr, if you could take roll.
Mr. Gleaves.
Present.
Mr. Jacobs.
Present.
Ms. McFarland.
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan-Weisskopf.
Present.
Mr. Vanover.
Present.
Mrs. Webster. Mr. Anderson.
Present. Council, the minutes for February 21st are still in progress. We should see them for our next meeting. Next, communications. Ms. Bauer, are there any communications for council this evening?
None, thank you, Mr. President.
All right, moving on to communications from the audience. At this point, I will be opening the floor for communications from the audience. As a reminder, each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to speak. And if you're interested in speaking to council for any matter, what you do is come up to the dais, sign in, and then you'll be given your time to speak. So at this point, the floor is open for communications from the audience.
I'm Julie Matheny. I'm here representing Springdale offering support. Just a reminder that we are awarding 2 $1,500 scholarships this year, once again, and the deadline for the applications is March 31st. They can be emailed to me directly, julie@kemperpondofficepark.com. Or any questions, you can call me at 513-505-5707. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is still open. Second call. Third and final call for communications from the audience. All right, at this point, I'm closing communications from the audience, and we will move on to ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready, we'll read Ordinance 8, 2024.
Ordinance number 8, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with SwimSafe Pool Management, Incorporated, and declaring an emergency. Whereas the city of Springdale, the city seeks to enter into an agreement with SwimSafe Pool Management, Incorporated, to have them manage, operate, and maintain the swimming pools located at the Springdale Community Center. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the city administrator is hereby authorized to execute an agreement with SwimSafe Pool Management, Incorporated, in the amount of $199,330 to have them manage, operate, and maintain the swimming pools located at the Springdale Community Center. The agreement. A copy of the agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with the applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law. Section 4, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is to return the agreement within the time frame required by the contractor to ensure pricing and availability in preparation for the upcoming swim season.
Council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 8, 2024. What is your pleasure? And keep in mind it does have an emergency clause attached.
Move to adopt.
Moved in second. At this point, I'll open for discussion. Any questions or discussion? Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to, I know council's had the opportunity to go through and see this document, primarily the same information that had been verbally provided, but with Schedule C, it outlines and enumerates some of the things that people had questions on, but it's still the same information that had been orally provided by myself and administration going forward. I do want to note that, excuse me, that the day after the meeting, I was supposed to have a luncheon with our state representative and a group of other elected officials, which got canceled at the last minute. It's going to be over in Evendale, and I found myself at the Evendale Rec Center, and I went and talked to their Parks and Rec director, and Mr. Adam Knight was kind to have a conversation with me about their pool and their services there, and that they've been with SwimSafe for a very long time, I believe over a decade at this point. And they had nothing but complimentary things to say. They said it's helped save them money in terms of maintenance and expedite things in terms of getting things fixed. They said they didn't see any situations where they were getting nickel and dimed if a swim meet ran late or anything like that. And after I spoke with him, I figured I'm in the area, I'll just stop by Sharonville. And Michael Bloomer, their Parks and Rec director, was willing to speak with me again. No appointment, just happened to be there, come in, very, very kind to speak with me. And similarly, sang their praises. I think he does some testimonials on some of their advertisements, is what Mr. Bloomer told me. He's an individual that grew up in Sharonville, knows the community well, loves the community. He said there's been no change since they have gone to Swim Safe. Said it's the same kids, literally generationally, that are sitting in lifeguard chairs, that are doing those things. And so he as well was very happy with the service. I say that just for council's benefit, residents' benefit. I personally didn't need to have those conversations with them because I've got close friends and elected officials in Sharonville. I know that pool in terms of how it runs. I've got family in Evendale. I know that pool in terms of how it runs. So when you're looking at a resume for me, when I see certain communities listed on there, I know that those things have operated well. There's some other communities, if you put them on there, it may not be as impressive for me. I may not have a personal knowledge with regard to them. But I just wanted to share that with everybody going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank the mayor for his input. He provided his comments to me from the things that he learned from speaking at those other communities. And I will tell you that some of the things that were in their agreements now appear in this agreement as a result of the mayor doing that due diligence, and I appreciate that. I also wanted council to know that I worked very hard with administration since the last meeting to address each and every one of the concerns that each member of council raised. And if you've had an opportunity to look through the contract, you should see that those are now addressed in there. Not only in the Exhibit C, but we also added some other safety provisions. As usual, when these things come out before council, you guys generate ideas. We listen, and I want you to know we incorporated those into this. If you feel the need, I can go through those one by one, but I think if you've had an opportunity to see it, it's pretty obvious. There's some nice protections for the city in the agreement, and SwimSafe agreed to those. I know they're here tonight, along with Charlie. I also worked very closely with Charlie on this to make sure that the things we were putting in were practical to Springdale. So I hope that as a result of the things you raised at the last meeting, you'll find this to be a much more appealing agreement. And if you do have any questions, we're all here to answer your questions. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Mr. Braun, I will say for myself, I did notice some substantial improvements based on the feedback. It seemed very responsive, especially around the areas, the swim meets and swim lessons. I know I appreciate the language and update there. I'm sure it was well-intentioned before, and we would have been fine based on experiences that we've had with other communities, but I always feel better if it's written down like you had made those changes. All right, Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we know where we're at right now with the hiring? How many more people that need to be hired?
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong. We had this conversation and we had a rec commission meeting last night. I believe we're at 7.
You're speaking lifeguards.
Lifeguards.
We have 8 applications.
8 applications and looking for 24?
Correct.
Okay. And we've had 1 application with regard to assistant aquatics director or aquatics director.
Yeah, one for the
Sorry, Mr. Wilson. I'm sorry, Mr. Will you come up to the podium so we make sure we get on the recording?
It's on, okay.
Thank
So yes, the question was for lifeguards, yes. We've had so far 8 applications, looking to fill 24. We've had 1 application for assistant aquatics director. That person was also interested in the aquatics director position. We have had 2 previously to that. We've had 2 aquatics director applications that didn't quite meet our credentials.
Mr. Cleaves, did you have follow-up or are you good? All right. Ms. Sullivan-Weiscup.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I have Mr. Wilson here, I'll ask a city question. There was some questions about the training For the swim safe, so I just wanted to, I know that Swim Safe said that they provided training, but then I read some stuff online that says that they have to pay for their own training, and I didn't know if the city was still going to reimburse if the kids had to pay. I just wanted clarification on that part as far as from the city stuff. I had more questions for Swim Safe, but I specifically wanted to know like how that was going to work if they had to pay for trainings. Would that be something that is still reimbursed from the city, even though they're not technically our employees anymore?
So I'll answer for Swim Safe this easy question. They do not have to pay for training.
Perfect.
So they take care of all that. Nobody's reimbursed, nobody's front-loaded on that, so.
Perfect. I do have other questions. I know that they were sent earlier because I wanted everybody to have time to look these things up of how many times did any part of a pool close for any of the pools for Swim Safe in the last year? And say that there's two different cities and they're both low on lifeguards and basically neither one of them are going to be able to run without some help. How do you decide which one gets the lifeguards and which one doesn't? Just out of
Let me do it.
curiosity.
Yeah, it can.
I'm going
so
to have
I-
these gentlemen introduce
Yep.
themselves before they start answering questions.
Yeah,
But
please.
we're
So-
very fortunate to have them here with us this evening.
So what I was going to say is, if we give, I believe we do have representatives from Swim Safe here. If you could give your name, and obviously that you're with Swim Safe, and then we can answer the questions, that'd be great. We appreciate you being here tonight to answer them.
Thank you for the opportunity. We always like speaking to councils and make sure we all have a good understanding of how we can best work together. My name's Carl Widener. I'm responsible for business development and client liaison. And this is JP Hayter. He's the vice president of Swim Safe Pool Management. So to your question, our municipal staffs are large enough. We have no history of having to choose between pools and
Good.
staffing. We operate 14 municipalities between Florence and the top part of Columbus, Ohio. So we have 19 years in business. Evendale's been with us since day one, and we've steadily picked up the business as, councils and pool and recreation people struggle to staff them. That's our specialty, second to our safety record and our focus on safety. We have a hiring, recruiting operation that is a year-round in-house department, and in the first and second quarter swells to between 6 and 7 individuals. We do a lot of recruiting, we do a lot of retention and return of previous employees, and we incent them, and we give them growth opportunities to move up from lifeguard to assistant manager to manager. So we've worked on that. It's our only business. It's what we do day and night, year-round.
Wait, but my question was, how many of your pools have you had to close down even parts of your pool? Because I know that several of the pools have had part-time close down, so I just want to know, how often does that happen? Like say, like at our pool, how we would have to close down, say, a slide. That has happened at other pools that I'm aware of. I just didn't know how often that happens. I'm trying to see if it's about the same as what we currently have, because then it would really be no change.
I would say that is not a frequent occurrence at all, even if we are somewhat short. Like Carl mentioned, we have very large municipality staffs. We'd expect that staff, if we called them to bring in extra help, because of the surrounding pools that we also operate, we're able to pull kids from other pools, also help facilitate that. So even if we were short a day, if there were be some sort of closure because of an emergency, it would not last long, I wouldn't imagine. So it is not a frequent occurrence.
Thank you. And then, because you mentioned safety, how many times have you been reported for neglecting safety issues, if at all?
None, and what we do is we work closely with all local health departments and municipalities to make sure. We do a lot of training of health department individuals. Again, it's all we do all year long. So we have a very consultative and collaborative relationship with all health departments and all of our clients. All of our clients, and we have a lot of pools. We have different divisions that handle country club pools, municipal pools, swim and tennis and fitness type pools. And so we form unique and collaborative relationships that are customized to your needs, requirements, and wants. And so we fashion our operation to meet those needs and make sure you're a satisfied client. As the mayor pointed out, our clients are our best salespeople because they're happy and we work hard to make them happy.
And my final question is, how would families that use Swim Safe for their swim lessons know what level to sign them up for after they've been in the Red Cross style of swim lessons?
That's a great question, and thanks. So we have a fully staffed in-house safety department that does swim lessons as well. So we develop a website for each one of our pools, and on that website it gives information of the different levels. They're very similar to Red Cross. We're a StarGuard focused company, but it's kind of very similar. It's different classes. There's also contact information for these individuals, and it's not unusual for parents to call and, hey, I got a question about this, can't do that, can we do this? Again, it's a collaborative kind of a thing. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry. If I could ask Charlie a question first, and then I do have some for you, if you don't mind staying up there. It'll be rather quick, the question for Charlie. How many lifeguards did we have to operate last year?
At this time?
No, during the summer, how many made it work?
Oh gosh, I want to say we had close to 20 to 22, I'd say. No? It was lower than that.
By the end of the season, we were down to 18.
By the end of the season, we did have a few folks.
Optimal, but.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we did have to shut down parts of the facility. I mean, it was, different parts had to get shut down because of low staffing.
Okay, and I have one more for Charlie, and I do apologize before I ask some questions for SwimSafe. One of the we got an email answering various questions from members of council, and one of the questions were, will we be charged if there's a closure under this contract? And the answer for council was, in general, SwimSafe will not charge us for what they don't do, was the answer. But if you look at page 6, in the event of a pool closing, the parties agree that there shall not be any cause for the amendment or modification of this agreement, and SwimSafe will not refund any amounts of compensation paid by client because of a pool closing, except as allowed in Section C. Section C allows a closure for 14 days before there's any change in what we're paying the contractor. So to me, that's kind of a big inconsistency, and I wondered if anybody could explain that for me. We are on page 6, Section B and C.
So a couple things to consider. We have a fully staffed in-house construction and repair operation. Our worst day is when a pool is not working for hours, not days. We don't have a history of pools closing. We don't have a history of charging people for work that we don't do. We expect to be made whole if, up until the time the pool closes. That being said, during the pandemic, probably 40 to 50% of our municipal pools chose not to open for that year, and then Florence chose not to open the second year. And so we did not charge them for that, obviously.
But under this agreement, you can, and that's my confusion.
Under this agreement, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Mr. Braun, did you have an answer for that? I saw you come.
And I believe you inserted language that it is closed for a partial or a full day, there's a credit of $400 given. If I remember correctly, your language that I saw in there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We did insert language, as you may see, in Section 1B that provides that we'll be reimbursed for times at which the pool is closed. Section C does not concern me because it specifically relates to repairs, meaning if there's repairs, like there's a problem with the pool itself,
Right.
They have 14 days to get that repair fixed. As to Clause B above, I do think when we go to move to amend this, that it would be nice if the last 2 words were simply changed to say, except as allowed in this agreement, instead of specifically referencing Section C. And I think that's consistent with the change you already agreed to.
Yeah, it's not an issue for us.
Yeah. So when we make the motion to amend the agreement, I would simply ask that as part of that, we include those 2 words. Okay? That will now make it crystal clear, just as we change some of the other language, that it's consistent with the provision we provided on page 2 that has the $400 a day or portion of a day refund.
Mr. Jacobs, did you have other questions?
Yes, thank you. So my next one is for SwimSafe, and I'm going to get very technical. I apologize to everybody in the room. One of my summer jobs is to be a pool tech, and so slinging chemicals has been my summer job for the last 15 years. So as I'm looking at some of your parameters, and I'm on page 3 of the agreement, when it talks about what you agree to keep the chemical levels at, one of the things jumped out to me. Cyanuric acid, it's called stabilizer, and again, I don't want to bore people with details, but for chlorine to stay active in a pool and for the bond to stay active, it has to battle constant sunlight, and stabilizer helps keep that bond going. But if stabilizer goes above a certain level, then you don't have the bond, and you're just pouring chlorine into the pool, and you're wasting money. And the parameter you have is less than 100 parts per million. Under Ohio State, it's the Ohio Administrative Code, a pool that is more than 70 parts per million is in violation and has to close. And so I'm not sure, I don't know if it's a typo, but cyanuric acid at 100 parts per million is not acceptable under the Ohio Administrative Code. I can cite you the numbers 3701-31-04. Now, if there's something I'm missing, I'd be happy, to hear an explanation of why we would be okay with 100 parts per million for that. And for the public, and I'm sorry, it's not that the acid is bad for anybody's skin, it's that you're just wasting chlorine when the numbers get that high. In my experience, you want it between 30 and 50, not 100, not above 70. But again, I may be missing something.
So I'll preference comments that I'd like JP to make, but I'd like to point out, and you're probably familiar with this, certified pool operators, which a lot of our managers are, our regional managers are all CPOs, and JP Hayter is certified to teach CPO and certified CPO operators. So he's definitely familiar with that and can address it.
You're reading correctly from the code. That is something that we can adjust, I think, going forward. We typically don't keep our pools anywhere above 50 parts per million because we feel like that's a safe zone. Once you start to get above 50 parts per million, the only way to get cyanuric acid out of the water, as you know, is dilution.
Yeah.
We're not trying to close the pool. We don't want to drain water out of the pool. So we can adjust that 100. I'm not sure why that would is, because to your point, that is not correct. And if we keep parts per million at around 100, that would not be within code.
So to Mr. Braun's point earlier, there's a couple of amendments we've talked about that we could do in a moment. Is that something that you're comfortable with us if we make that change tonight?
Yes, sir.
To get to a number, because I want to make sure we get closure on this.
Yes, sir.
So is the number we should offer to amend the contract to, here we're doing live edits, to 70 or 50, what would be more appropriate based on your experience in the code if we're changing the contract?
I would say 70.
70?
And we
that
usually-
stays in line with, obviously, I understand they're saying that they would keep it 50 as their target. The contract is the upper bound, and that's when they'd be held, breach, and there's a whole lot of things with that. So is 70 something that makes sense when we get to that? Or do we need
Just
to?
in my experience, if I'm at 70, that's a problem and I need to close the pool. That's from Hamilton County Board of Health regulations.
This is
Now, to be fair, 71, in a sense.
No, I understand that.
You've done the test, and it's a very gray area.
No,
But
it is. It's a difficult test.
70 still seems risky, but that's just me, and I don't want to.
We also have no problem putting in 60.
I want to get, so if we amend it in a moment when we do our changes to 60, does that make more sense from your experience?
Yeah, we're fine with 60.
Fine with 60. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Jacobs?
I understand. Thank you.
60 is a better number? I'm just keeping a note of the things that we have to address.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got a 60 there. Did you have another question?
My last question is Charlie, and thank you so much. I know those
Sure.
are very technical questions.
Thank you.
No, that's
Well, and it may be for them. Do we know what SwimSafe would pay a director?
So, Director, no, I can't answer that question. That would be a SwimSafe question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Webster?
Charlie, well, I need to have this verified in my own mind. Will the people that have already applied for the lifeguards that have been here before, will they be guaranteed to have a job?
So that's something that we would recommend to SwimSafe, and they are usually very agreeable in working with us to make sure that we remain or retain that connection to the community. That's something that we want.
Yeah, and also the concession people, they'll have a job too, like they did before?
Yeah, that is the full intention.
Okay.
Correct.
That's fine. Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
Absolutely.
Ms. McFarland?
Thank you, Mr. President. My first question is, what type of staffing will be on duty at any given time? And I'm not sure if that's a SwimSafe question or if that's a Charlie question of what we require. We've always had either the manager or aquatics director or assistant director, one of the two of them are always on duty. Is somebody in a management or supervisory position going to always be available? Or is that an on-call?
Yeah, so a manager should always be there, correct?
I'm sorry, sir, could you come to the mic just to make sure?
Might
Sorry
as
to
well
have you
just
keep
stand
coming
up here,
back and
Carl.
forth. I appreciate it.
I don't want to get too complicated. So the contract specifies in Exhibit B what the personnel that we're providing during pool hours on site. So it lists the number of lifeguards. There is always a manager or assistant manager on site during pool hours. On the concession, calls for 2 people to be in the concession operation, and one of them would be a concession manager. We have a director of that oversees all of our concession operations because we have several of them, and so she keeps an eye on that, but it's all part of the pool manager's responsibility. I should also comment that on top of the pool manager, we have a regional manager who oversees a series of pools that are in close proximity, and they're constantly moving around. They do spot checks. They make sure everything's running. They have more technical skill. They are CPO certified. And then on that, we have an operations manager and then JP and the president of the company. So there's several layers. If there's ever any issue, we all carry cell phones on 27, for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We'll answer it. We have people in the vicinity. We're based right over in Loveland, so we're 11 minutes away. It's not an issue for us.
Okay, so just to clarify, it says will be on duty during all hours of operation specified above. So that specifies 12 to 8, 12 to 6 on Sundays. Will there be someone available before that, during swim lesson time, during swim team time, on swim meet nights? So outside of those normal hours of operation, will there be a manager available?
Yeah, there's typically a manager there. Now, if there's, 1 or 2 guards called for swim lessons, I'm not always certain that that's a manager, but it's usually an elevated person. So we have, a structure in there, but we always make sure that we have a pool manager there while the majority of our staff is there, and always during pool open hours.
Sorry, I missed that in the 2 lines down.
I think that's also an older version. All right, Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. A child that has worked at the pool, or that has seen his brother or sister work at the pool for years, they've only worked at Springdale Pool. So if someone signs an application under this contract, you fill voids, you assign people where needed. That's what it seems like to me. Under the structure here for years, you only work at this pool. How could you guarantee, or how could you stop a child that lives here in Springdale that wants to work at this pool, but his manager tells him or her that, no, you have to go to another pool and fill in over there? And historically, these children have seen their older siblings work only here, and that's what I would assume that's what they would want to do also.
We would like every Springdale kid to work solely at this location. When they apply online, they specify Springdale as their pool. Once the staff is completely full, then and only then will we offer them a position at a different facility. Their manager would never come and say, hey, you're going to Evendale today, or you're going to Sharonville today. That's not how that works. Towards the end of the season, we give kids the opportunity to go to other pools. That is their choice. We would never force, ask, make a child work at any other pool besides what they signed up for.
Okay.
Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kind of piggyback, I've become a pool boy here in the last couple of years and have a hot tub. And the numbers are, when the facility is empty, usually early in the morning, and once human body hits the water, sunscreen, tanning stuff, and biological materials, those numbers are going to change. You know, it's not a static situation. My aquarium, I got a 125-gallon aquarium, and I take a reading. Well, I've got a pH meter up there, and at one point of the day it'll be 6.4. It may jump to 6.6, and at night it comes back down. So those numbers are not a continuum. They float. There's a range, and that's, you know, what they've given is a range. So that's just to understand that if it's, you know, 70, then, you know, there's a point in time it very well could get there, you know.
So just to respond to that, we have a logbook that categorizes all that. We check the chemicals every 2 hours. If there's ever an adjustment needs made, we have chemical controllers, I believe, on site. So the controllers at the pool help you regulate that to adjust for that change. Those don't always work perfect, they're machines. Right. So to that point, we still check the controllers and the water every 2 hours to make sure they're calibrated properly. If they're not, the adjustments are made, and then we don't wait another 2 hours to check. We usually give it about 30 minutes to make sure that change has been made. If that chemical, you know, and then from there we progress. Then the person, you know, if the manager can't handle that on duty, we call the on-call supervisor. They come in if it's a bigger issue. But to your point, all the chemicals fluctuate, and we do weekly checks on alkalinity, daily checks on alkalinity, to be quite honest, depending on the pool water. We check calcium, pH, chlorine, all that's accounted for, cyanuric acid. So, and we log all that in a data book that's available at any time.
Right. Yeah, I just want that to be understood.
Sure.
That, you know, you pick a number, well, at noon it may be.
Yeah.
At
At 12:30,
12:30, yeah, exactly. And my other comment would be, as the mayor so mentioned, there are increasing numbers of municipalities going in this direction, and I've never been one to follow the parade, but that does tell me something, that this is where we've headed. I mean, our numbers are saying that now. You know, quite honestly, let's be real. We don't have the numbers right now to open the pool. And, you know, if we don't go this direction, I can't tell you what's going to happen. So, thank you.
Mr. Jacobs.
Sorry, in the agreement, it says testing every hour. You just said 2.
I'd have to double check.
And I will say this,
believe it's every 2.
as a tech, every 12 hours is the minimum. So
Yeah.
every hour could be seen as excessive,
I can
of
see
course.
that as well.
And some of them, as you mentioned, we test weekly. So I just didn't know if it was 2 or 1, because the agreement says 1.
I believe in our logbook it's every 2.
Thank you.
So again, that's a point that if we want to correct, this is our chance to fix it in the contract. Obviously, obviously, there's always good faith that we're going to operate good faith with the contracts to make sure that if things don't go well, we know what to expect.
Understand.
So is this another thing that I should tag, that we want to make an adjustment, or are we comfortable as it is? I'm hearing comfort. Okay.
I mean, it's all within health code compliance.
It's well within health code
Yeah.
compliance.
I just didn't want to set unreasonable expectations in the contract, either on your side.
Sure. No,
Appreciate
I
it.
understand
Yeah.
that, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. This might be a question for Mr. Wilson. What is the actual hiring process? When do you start? And do you reach out, what magnitude do you reach out to Princeton schools? And I just, you know, I'm new to this. I'm trying to figure out how, is it the fact that we're not trying to reach out, or is it just not the applicants signing up?
I would say it's fair for that's a loaded question, but I'd say, you know, we start in December, you know, reach out to the previous applicants, see what we get back by the beginning of January, to really give those folks who we hired in the past the opportunity to apply and take those positions, and then start marketing to the masses, Indeed, Facebook, reaching out to Princeton. In fact, this year we reached out to even the middle school even for trying to get teachers to be the aquatics director or assistant director. So, you know, we try all avenues that we can. We can't force people in the door, but we try anything that we can to try to get people on board. It definitely came to a head as we found out the amount of returning, and after we posted the position, usually we get a big pop in the beginning of applicants that flurry in anytime we market for a position within the city. We usually get a big pop in the beginning and then kind of filter in. We didn't really get any of that, which is very concerning, especially to where the numbers were last year. So other avenues have to be examined if the city wants to continue its pool operations. So.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, this is a universal issue. It's not unique to just Springdale, and as we talked about at the last meeting, ourselves and Blue Ash are two of the last ones standing that have been self-managed, and they were going through some issues with regard to staffing as well. And you'd heard previously with regard to Ms. Brooks, it's been a challenge over the years. So it's not unique for us this year. It's not unique for us. It's a universal thing. And the two directors that I spoke to, this is a big reason why they're using a pool management company, is because it makes it so much easier staffing-wise. You run into the other issues of, and we talked about this as we're getting ready for budgets, before there was any issue with regard to us managing our own pool, that I indicated I got approached in, I feel like it was probably October, by a young lady who's one of our residents, a senior at Princeton, who's like, hey, I know you're not married yet, but you're gonna be. I'd like to work here, but we're getting paid less than at Evendale. And I said, well, we'll look at that. And so we had some conversations at budget time, and we raised the rates up a little bit then. So we're in a competitive place with where they were. They're $14 and some cents. Most of the swim safes are $15, so we're right there with it. But the other thing you get in competition is you can go work at a fast food place and make $18 an hour. And so it's a competitive thing just in general. If the kid's like 16, he's like, I want to go make some money. You go, where can I go make the money? The allure of being David Hasselhoff, when Mr. Yule was a lifeguard, has lost its luster from back then. So some of it literally comes down to the dollars and the cents, and I think that's probably, again, this hasn't been something I've studied, but I think that's probably part of the issue in terms of not getting applicants. But it's not unique to us. It's everywhere.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is more for the administration. How can we as a city evaluate how this goes? And I don't mean, I mean from all aspects. Our residents, do our residents see a change? Is this different than what we've experienced in the past? And is this something that our residents want to continue to see? You know, we keep hearing everything's gonna be fine, it's all gonna work out, and I keep my fingers crossed that it does. But if it doesn't, how can we meet at some point? And I don't mean just, you know, Charlie and John. I mean, bring in some people that can provide some feedback as city residents and people that are using the pool to provide that information to say, yeah, this worked out great, or no, this didn't work out well at all, and here's why.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's an excellent thing for us to keep our finger on the pulse of. In 14 years serving on council, I've seen this chamber filled for two things as it was at the last meeting, and that was for a sidewalk on Kemper Road and for a needle exchange. And so, you know, our residents are going to let us know, I have no question or doubt, with regard to how it's going. The way this process goes, and Mr. Wilson can talk about this, there's going to be ongoing regular communication with regard to how things are going. If things need to be tweaked within this agreement, it indicates things can be tweaked. But our rec staff is going to be on a regular basis going through and having those conversations. And then I encourage, as I have for anything, whether feedback is good, positive, or indifferent, I encourage residents to talk to your elected officials, call me, you can call our administrative staff, you can call our staff at the Parks and Rec. There are issues, let us know, and we're going to go through and address those things. But we got to know about it. Also along those lines, Mr. Anderson spoke about this a little bit at the last meeting. He and I talked about in the area of September to have a opportunity for residents to come in and speak with, didn't want to commit anybody else, but Mr. Anderson's committed to doing it, I'm committed to doing it, if anybody else wants to do it, but an open opportunity for them to come in. We're looking at September because it's 6 months from an event that we're going to have here next week in March, and it's right before we get into the budget time. It'll be at the close of the pool season, and we can hear feedback with regard to what's going on. And then the ultimate part of it, and Mr. Vanover touched on this, you know, in terms of this is going to be okay and we go down this path. I'll be very clear. We've had this conversation in the administration. This is a situation that as it came up, and Mr. Wilson was diligent with regard to letting Mr. Jones and Mr. Yule know, hey, we're not where I'd like to be at this point in time in terms of staff. And they went through and problem solved. This is the problem solving that we've come to. And the reality is, you know, there's been lots of feedback and lots of things that have been discussed. There's been no other alternative or option that's come up. And so this is the alternative option. Council has this legislation before them, and council can do whatever council feels it should do. There's 7 individuals, you vote whatever you think is appropriate. You've heard the recommendation from the administration, myself. This is a matter of solving the problem. If council chooses not to do that, that's council's prerogative. We would have to stay the course of trying to wait and see if we have enough applicants, and at the point that we do, then we would open the pool. Until then, we wouldn't. And so I don't know that there's a big choice if there's some other option that we're looking at, but it's council's prerogative in terms of how we move forward. I know Mr. Wilson, Mr. Jones, Mr. Yule, the help of Mr. Braun have did an excellent job in trying to solve this problem that's come up, and they've done it in a very quick, rapid process to try to address it because it's very time sensitive. These gentlemen will tell you, and you see in the contract, and I can tell you from talking with the director at Evendale and Sharonville, these contracts get signed in the fall. So we're way behind where things are. And at the same time, you know, Mr. Wilson and the staff tried to do everything in terms of hiring folks on and waiting. If you sat here and you did it in December 15th, then people would say, well, you guys didn't even try to hire people, right? So they waited until got to a point where Charlie goes, this is a problem. And so it's like, okay, well, what can we do in terms of problem solving? And this is the solution we come up with. So it's council's prerogative and what folks want to do, but I think the problem solving the administrative staff has done has been more than reasonable and rational, and it seems like a way to go forward.
Mayor, if I may piggyback on that question, on your original question. So we're going to meet with them weekly. They're going to be stopping by at least how many times a week?
Our regional person 4 times typically, but on a mutual.
I'm sorry, could you step forward when you're speaking?
So our regional person that has the pools in the region will be by at least 4 times a week. On newer pools, it can be 5 to 6 times. As I said, they're rotating all the time. They want to make sure that they're on top of the staff and that, your needs and wants are being met. So that's not an issue for us.
And so what I wanted to elaborate more on that is if there's somebody that has a concern in the community, they need to come tell one of our Parks and Rec Department staff members so then we can address it or, pat them on the back for what a good job or things that we need to improve upon. So we need to make sure that it's an open communication between the community and management here at the community center. So they need to come and tell us so that we can address these issues.
Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for the mayor or Charlie. I saw in one of the email answers how we reached out to find new applicants. I didn't see LinkedIn on that list. Do we use LinkedIn? Or
Um,
Indeed, perhaps?
It's Indeed, yeah.
You did Indeed, but we don't
Yes.
use LinkedIn?
I don't believe we do. I'd have to ask HR, but I don't believe that we do LinkedIn.
Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. We all have been around for a while, Lawrence, myself, we cross our fingers every year on Memorial Day that the pool opens. We have a 50-plus-year-old structure over there. Last year, we were losing, 6,500 gallons of water a day?
Maybe a little less than that, but we've had more in the past.
Right.
That Sharon can attest to.
So, staffing at some point this year could be moved. And when that pool goes down, we're looking at a minimum 2 years to get a facility back up if the pool comes back. I mean, that's a decision that is going to have to be made in this room at some point with dollars that right now we don't have. So, to me, we say our little prayer and hope that the pumps fire up and continue working, and we get the staffing on board and get through the summer.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is my last question. I say that. Is there a pay scale that you guys can attest to right now? We've already heard that we were raising the bar with Springdale because we were having trouble finding people. And there's been a lot of research done, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to speak with any SwimSafe employees, but I've received feedback that some of the lifeguards are receiving a pay along the line of $11 to $12 an hour. That is nowhere near the $15 or $14. I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what it was. But is there a pay scale that, as you guys advertise for this job, you're saying we are offering a position starting at whatever dollar?
So two things. In our contract, we figure an average wage of $15 an hour for a lifeguard. That being said, a new lifeguard would probably come in at the $14.50 because each year we give them somewhere, a 50-cent bump until they hit a ceiling. So our assistant managers would be a couple dollars more than that, and the manager would be in the $20 an hour range. So this is a wage scale that went up with everything else 2-3 years ago and has changed the staffing models. Yeah, you can stand next to a French fryer and hope not to get fried up for a few bucks more. The other thing is we work closely with parents, and a lot of our employees, this is their first job. So we're not only an employer, we try to be a mentor. We have ways to move up in the organization if that's what they like, but the reality is it's a 3 to 4 year cycle. So it's not, you don't have 10, 12-year lifeguards that are hitting up, trying to bust through a ceiling. So we have found very good success with getting that pay scale corrected, and it's a good way for us to attract talented individuals to come aboard. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's also worth mentioning for the pay scale, as a private employer, they have more flexibility to make changes on demand. I believe our pay scales require action by City Council to make a change if we were to increase the range beyond its current maximum. So that there's a little more flexibility to respond there as well.
I shouldn't have said that was my last question. So there is, SwimSafe employees will not be city employees, correct?
Correct.
So, it's going to sound funny. My kids can work at the pool if SwimSafe is there. Megan's kids, they're not allowed to right now because we are city employees. So that goes away if SwimSafe takes over.
So, and Mr. Brown, did you have something for that?
Yeah, so if they're not working for the city, they're working for a third-party entity, that would open that possibility.
They are our employees. We issue the W-2. They're on our payroll. They get paid by us. you as a client, some of our clients, especially country clubs, don't allow kids to work there for obvious reasons, but I don't think any municipalities limit us. They're more concerned that we're hiring local citizens, which is always our focus. So they have familiarity, they have proximity to the pool in case we need to call them in, and, you know, they know half the people coming to the pool. So it's a big familiarity. We have a customer service component in our training, which we've amped up in the last few years, where it's, you know, 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds are taking on some pretty verbal adults. So we're training them to, you know, ramp it down a little bit and know how to escalate it and so forth. So those are all things that we've modified as the world's changed around us to be successful in what we do. I know you raised a question earlier about, hey, what if this doesn't work out? We have never had a municipality self-manage, come to us, and then go back to self-managing. It has not happened in our company history of 19 years.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Ms. McFarland, if you ever decide you want to be an attorney with your one more question, I think you got a good future in it. Along the lines, though, what you had said, I believe that one of our neighboring mayor's kids have been lifeguards at the pool where they sit. So there's that opportunity too.
I think it's also worth mentioning that not all of those restrictions are from the state. Some of that was a policy that was implemented with the last administration and could be repealed at any point in time. Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. What is your incentive to increase the recruitment of Springdale kids for our pool?
I mean, I would think the key thing for us is we hit the ground running. As Mayor mentioned, we usually start these contracts in the fall with the hiring. So once we would get the word, we would be out and try to hit the schools again, put out social media posts, work with the community, just put the word out, whether that's flyers or anything possible. Our HR team will recruit relentlessly. Because we start those hirings in the fall, we have a lot of pools that are already fully staffed. So we can zero in our focus on the pools that are not fully staffed, which would bring Springdale in this situation. So we have 2 full-time HR people. We have other people helping out. The goal would be not only get them hired, but make sure they're trained. You know, sometimes you get them interviewed, you get them hired, but try to get them through the training as well. So it's a process that we'll have to expedite pretty quickly.
And that's all the secrets he's allowed to give you.
That's it.
Ms. Sullivan-Westcott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did forget one question earlier. If a lifeguard that we currently have is Red Cross certified, do they need to get recertified with SwimSafe, or do you accept their lifeguard certification with Red Cross?
We accept their, and they can choose to recertify at Red Cross or switch over to StarGuard Elite. But if they have a 2-year certification that they got last year, they do not need to certify until their certification expires.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions at this point. Thank you very much for coming in and answering the questions. I hope that wasn't too painful. We do appreciate your willingness to respond and be as open as you have been.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Council, it's important to note at this point, there were 2 items in the contract as we were reviewing that we said, hey, we might need to come back and do an amendment. As a matter of process, what would need to happen? Those 2 were on page 6, section B. There was a recommendation to replace section C below with the words "this agreement," and on page 3, replacing the 100 parts per million with 60 parts per million. In order for that to happen, since we're inside of it would be an amendment. So someone on council would have to make a motion to amend and then state those 2, and then we would go through that. Mr. Braun, did I have that correct?
Thank you. I also would recommend that as part of section 4B, where it says pool water will be tested hourly, that it should read pool water will be tested approximately every 2 hours.
Approximately 2 hours. All right, so just so everyone's clear on that, the way that we work in process is somebody would need to make a motion. It would need to be seconded. We would vote to amend the contract, and then once that's voted on, we would then come back and have an opportunity to vote on the amended contract, or I'm sorry, the amended ordinance, the ordinance with the amended contract attached. Does that make sense? Okay. Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion that we amend Exhibit A as stated, change, well, on page 3 from 100, less than 100 parts per million to 60, on page 6, 7B, scratch section C below and add this agreement. And Mr. Braun, help me
On
out.
page 3, the tested hourly is right below the 100 parts per million. Sorry. Is that what you intended?
Yes.
And then the testing approximately
Every 2 hours.
Thank you. We have a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Is there any questions or discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, Ms. Browder, will you please poll council on the motion to amend as stated by Mr. Vanover?
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. The motion to amend the 3 sections is approved with 7 affirmative votes. All right. Now we're back to the original motion. We have a moved and seconded to approve ordinance 8/2024 with the emergency clause as amended. At this point, Ms. Browder, will you please poll council? And this is for the actual ordinance.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
No.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
No.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. The ordinance 8/2024 as amended is approved with 5 affirmative votes, and that is sufficient to pass with the emergency clause, so it'll take effect on signature. Thank you, council, and everyone for attending and all the feedback that we received for that motion. I will say that as was mentioned earlier, administration was very responsive in amending the contract, and I think there were a lot of positive changes that came about from that community engagement. So thank you for that. All right, moving on. Next, we have ordinance 10/2024. This does have the emergency clause. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 10/2024, an ordinance removing special assessments previously levied for certain public improvements in the city of Springdale, Ohio, in cooperation with the Suburban Communities Energy Special Improvement District Shakely Project, and declaring an emergency. Whereas the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, the Council passed Resolution R13-2019 on September 4th, 2019, the resolution of necessity, and approved a petition for special assessments for special energy improvement projects and affidavit, the petition, and the Suburban Communities Energy Special Improvement District Program Plan, supplement plan for 1 Shakely Way, Springdale, Ohio project, the supplemental plan from Princeton Properties Incorporated as later succeeded by Princeton Properties Incorporated, the owner. And whereas Council passed ordinance number 35-2019 on September 4th, 2019, the ordinance levying assessments and levied property assessed clean energy PACE special assessments for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and approving certain public improvements at 1 Shakely Way in the city of Springdale, Ohio, the city, in cooperation with the district as requested and described in the petition and the supplemental plan, the special assessments. And whereas Lever Capital Funding, LLC, together with its successors and assigns, including, without limitation, PACE Loan Group, 2019-1 LLC, the investor, provided financing the project advance to the owner under the Energy Project Cooperative Agreement dated as of September 18, 2019, the Energy Cooperative Agreement between the owner, Greenworks, the district, and the city for the purpose of paying and financing the cost of the special energy improvement projects described in the petition and the supplemental plan. And whereas as provided in the Energy Project Cooperative Agreement, the owner has prepaid to Greenworks all amounts outstanding with respect to the project advance, and the owner and Greenworks have notified the city that the remaining special assessment should be reduced to $0. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, members elected, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, each capitalized term not otherwise defined in this ordinance or by reference to another document shall have the meaning assigned to it in the Energy Project Cooperative Agreement. Section 2, under the Energy Project Cooperative Agreement, the city agreed that in the event the project advance is prepaid in whole or in part, it would, in cooperation with the owner, and to the extent permitted by law, cause the aggregate lien of the special assessments to be no greater than the remaining principal of and interest, premium, and fees, if any, on the project advance through its final repayment. Section 3, Greenworks has notified the city that all special assessments levied by the city and certified by the city auditor to the county auditor pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 727.33, are to be reduced by the amount of the aggregate special assessment prepaid. The remaining principal of and interest, premium, and fees on the project advance will be $0, and the amount of special assessments necessary to pay principal of and interest, premium, and fees on the project advance will be $0. Section 4, the aggregate special assessments previously levied by this council and certified by the city auditor to the county auditor are hereby reduced to 0. The city auditor and the Department of Development of the city are hereby authorized to take any actions as may be necessary in order to cause the county auditor to reduce the amount of the special assessments to $0 before real property tax bills for the tax year 2023 are prepared. Section 5, in compliance with Ohio Revised Code Section 319.61, the clerk of the council is directed to deliver a certified copy of this ordinance to the county auditor of Hamilton County, Ohio, within 20 days after its passage. Section 6, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is for this ordinance to take effect at the earliest possible date in order to cause an appropriate reduction in the amount of the special assessments prior to the preparation of real property tax bills for the tax year 2023, payment in calendar year 2024.
Council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 10, 2024. It does have the emergency clause. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you could poll council.
Ms. Sullivan Meiskop.
Aye.
Mr. Vanover.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mrs. Webster. Mr. Jacobs.
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye. Ordinance 10, 2024 is approved with 7 affirmative votes. Next, we have Ordinance 11, 2024. It does have the emergency clause attached. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 11, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing agreement with respect to the Glen Springs Fuel Station project and the execution of ancillary development-related documents and declaring an emergency. Whereas CCA Glen Springs LLC developer desires to enter into a tax increment financing agreement with the City of Springdale, as more fully set forth in Attachment A to this ordinance, the development agreement pertaining to the development of a fuel station and convenience store at the project near the southwest corner of Glen Springs Drive and Springfield Pike within the City of Springdale, the project site. And whereas developer anticipates that the project will result in the creation of approximately 35 full-time equivalent permanent employees with an annual payroll of approximately $873,000. And whereas the costs to develop the project have increased significantly as a result of public improvements to Glen Springs Drive that are necessitated by the construction thereof, as more fully described in the development agreement, the project public improvements. And whereas the city's economic development director has recommended a 10-year, 75% real property tax exemption for the project pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code Section 5709.40B, the TIF Act, subject to the passage by this council of a separate ordinance authorizing such exemption, the project TIF and the TIF ordinance as applicable. And whereas the parties anticipate that the service payments in lieu of taxes that will be generated by the project TIF will be, 1, used to pay certain administrative fees to the Hamilton County Auditor, or Hamilton County, Ohio Auditor. 2, used to make payments to the Board of Education of the Princeton City Schools, the school district, and the Great Oaks Institute of Technology and Career Advancement, the JVSD. 3, to be used to reimburse the developer for not to exceed $500,000 of the costs incurred by the developer in constructing the project public improvements, and for any excess revenues under the project TIF to be retained by the city to be applied to any lawful purpose as expected to be more fully set forth in the TIF ordinance. And whereas the city has determined that it is in the best interest of the city to enter into the development agreement and consummate the transaction set forth therein, because the city will receive substantial economic and non-economic benefits from the project, in that the project will create jobs, stimulate economic growth in the city, and enable the project site to be put to its highest and best use for the benefit of the people of the city. And whereas Section 13 of Article 8 of the Ohio Constitution provides that to create or preserve jobs and employment opportunities and to improve the economic welfare of the people of the state, it is a public interest and proper public purpose for the state or its political subdivisions to lend aid or credit for industry, commerce, distribution, and research. And whereas the city believes that the project is in the vital and best interests of the city and the health, safety, and welfare of its residents, and is in accordance with the public purposes and provisions of applicable federal, state, and local laws and requirements. And now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the recitals to this ordinance are incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, that the mayor is hereby authorized to execute the development agreement with the developer in substantially the form attached as Exhibit A, or Attachment A to this ordinance, pertaining to the redevelopment of the project site with the project. For the avoidance of doubt, this ordinance is not intended to operate as the TIF ordinance and does not bind the council to pass the TIF ordinance. The TIF ordinance, if passed, will be subject to separate legislation. Section 3, the council authorizes the appropriate city officials to take all necessary and proper actions to fulfill the terms of this ordinance and the development agreement, including but not limited to execution by the mayor of any and all ancillary agreements, amendments, all as deemed necessary or appropriate by the mayor. Section 4, that it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of council concerning and relating to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22. Section 5, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the city's charter, be in full force and effect immediately upon adoption. The reason for the emergency is to enable the development of the project site described in the development agreement to commence at the earliest possible time for the economic welfare of and the provision of adequate housing opportunities for the people of the city of Springdale. Section 6, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2, Section 6 of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is the immediate need to enable the parties to execute the development agreement as soon as possible so that the developer can promptly move forward with the project, thereby creating a significant economic benefit and enhancement to the city at the earliest possible time.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance 11, 2024 with the emergency clause. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Browder, poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 11, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Next, we have ordinance 12, 2024. This also has the emergency clause attached. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 12, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property associated with the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. Whereas the city of Springdale, the city, seeks to purchase portions of real property needed in order to complete the road construction project along Northland Boulevard, the project, and whereas the city has reached an agreement with the owners of the property to be purchased in order to complete the project. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, the City of Springdale City Council hereby authorizes the mayor and city administrator to enter into agreements to purchase the needed portions of the real properties identified in the attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein by reference. These properties are needed by the city in order to complete the road construction project along Northland Boulevard. Section 2, the mayor and city administrator are authorized to execute any and all documents needed in order to complete the purchase of the properties identified in the attached Exhibit A. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law. Section 5, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is the need to complete these acquisitions in order to meet property acquisition deadlines associated with the Northland Boulevard Road project.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance 12, 2024. It does have the emergency clause attached. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Browder, poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 12, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Ms. Sullivan Wisecup.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that we go to an executive session under Article 2, D1 of the Springdale Charter to discuss economic development issues.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Are we expecting any action out of this before we vote? No? All right. Questions or discussion? Ms. Browder, if you poll council to move to executive session.
Mrs. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. As you heard, we don't expect action out of this. We are in executive session. session. All right, next we'll move on to old business. Is there any old business to bring before council? Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to reference, obviously, we still have a nail situation in our community, and just indicating police are still going out and patrolling. There's extra patrols in and around Heritage Hill. They're going out with, officers are actually getting out while they're on patrol, looking for nails. They've got a magnet, collecting nails. But I really wanted to commend some of our residents who are going out, they're collecting nails, and they're really doing a great job communicating to our police department and our staff about where they're finding them, the time frames, which is helpful in terms of investigation. So it's a great collaborative effort with our residents trying to go through as we fight that battle. And I'm constantly in contact with the prosecutor there in Westchester in the Area 3 Court for Butler County as that case is moving along. That one, I believe right now they're waiting to get a trial date, and I'll keep folks updated as I hear things there. Thank you.
And to be clear, people should continue to call in that. This is not, it is helpful. So as people find these, especially these large groupings, the time and calling that in, it is being listened to, and it is important that we keep getting that information from the community. Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. To piggyback, our street and road gang are out there physically walking the street, and I've seen them out there at least 2 times just this past week. I mean, they were parking their truck and they're walking the curb. So, you know, doing what we can. I just hope I can get a front row seat after the court date, because I'm going to get my
Impact
victim statement in there.
You can count me on that list as well.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a long list of people that want to share their experiences with as they find the people.
Now, when your tire discounter bill's more than your car payment.
I feel that. Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you. I have told the prosecutor not to mess this up. There's a city of 11,000 people that are watching, so.
All right. Any other old business for tonight? All right. Seeing none. New business? Any new business from council? All right. Seeing none. Meetings and announcements. Ms. Sullivan-Wisecup.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Commission will meet in these chambers on Tuesday, March 12th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Ewell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Civil Service will meet tomorrow, Thursday, March 7th at 2 p.m. in the council conference room.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The State of the City address will be next Wednesday, the 13th of March at 7 p.m. at the Rec Center.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next Board of Health meeting will be March 14th at 6:30 next to these chambers.
Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. The BZA meeting that is scheduled for the 26th of this month has been canceled. There's some training that supposed to be about an hour or two, probably before the next meeting, which is scheduled April 23rd. And I have a couple announcements I want to make. I went ahead and I spent some time with our fire department. This was this past Monday. I scheduled time with Chief Stanley from 8 in the morning till noon. I just want to report how our fire department is doing a fantastic job. I think people really need to know this. Again, I arrived, hold on for a minute here. I arrived at quarter till, and I was paired up with Captain Craig Coleman. He's a Princeton grad. He's a Springdale resident. During that time, 8 a.m., there's a shift change, and I got to meet some of the people who were leaving and got some of their thoughts. And then at 8:15, they had a shift meeting, and all they did was go over information from the night before, the day before, and what they need to get ready to do to prepare for the day. And at 8:37, we got a call. There was an elderly person that had become ill on Mangrove. So I rode with the fire captain and along with the rest of the fire crew. And the fire truck parked, and we parked behind them. And as they went in and assessed the man, they were getting ready to make a determination if they needed to call the ambulance. So they called the paramedics, they came. And what was interesting was in the interim, a woman was leaving to go to work and backed right into the fire truck. And so everybody came together at one time, had to call the police. The police came and had to do the report. And I'm sitting there looking at all of this. And what was the craziest thing was I knew the woman that hit the fire truck. But anyway, we calmed her down. Everybody was good. They transported the man to the hospital. And then we go back to the department, and the captain was making his report. So back then I got a chance to talk to a lot of people, get some feel about, how they feel about the job. The crew is young. They're fully staffed now. And I have something, a little bit more about the staffing. But at 9:41, we got a call, Triangle Park in Sharonville. So we go to Sharonville, and I got to see the collaboration between two units, Sharonville's unit and our unit. They worked extremely well together to alleviate the issue that came to fruition at Triangle Park. And that was very taken care of very quickly, and we go back to the station. 10:56, we get a call about some wires being down on Distant Lane. The captain called Spectrum, which is a roundabout way of the resident calling. This immediately goes to the people that needs to actually come out and take care of this. And after that, I basically came back and I talked to Lieutenant about the staffing and how it helps them out with, I just want to read what he sent to me. He says, Councilman Gleaves, first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and spend time with us to see what we do. I'm writing to recap our discussion earlier. You inquired about the effects of better staffing with firefighters. I explained to you that staffing is more than just more people in the firehouse. It allows us to run with more people on our trucks, which improves our safety and fire on the ground and on incidents in general. As they say, safety is in numbers. Where in the past, we were forced to make runs with minimum staffing a lot more often, and we can now make faster, more efficient, and safety-oriented decisions and make really good decisions on life-threatening situations. It has lowered our overall overtime usage, which is, this has a few different benefits. One that is easy to see and others that are not that visible. The obvious one is that it saves the city money. This could lead to better funding for training, which improves a multitude of things. One thing is better performance on incidents, which leads to better outcomes for citizens that we serve. By offering more training opportunities, it will lead to better firefighter retention, which is extremely important, which will also save the city money. Above and beyond that, maybe the most important is the mental health aspect to the firefighters. You may ask yourself how that correlates, but I explain in a little bit better. Our department is pretty young. Our department is pretty young, and it comes where young men and women are starting new families. With the increased staffing, we get the opportunity to go home every shift and spend time with our families. Being away from our families for 24 hours at a time can definitely take its toll. we miss out on a lot of holidays, birthdays, and family functions. This was sent to me respectfully from Joshua Cook, who's a fire lieutenant, and they run a really good ship over there. And, you know, it's a life and death thing, and it was an honor for me to go find out what they do, how it works, and just get a pulse of what they're going through. So that's my report there for the fire department.
All right, thank you for sharing your experiences with them. We do have an amazing fire and police department here. Our public safety is top-notch. I think we remain committed to that throughout. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple announcements. Primary elections take place Tuesday, March 19th at our auxiliary gym at the down at the community center. JC's Easter egg hunt. That will be Saturday, March 30th at 12 p.m. Ross Park. Sorry, council, you have to be under 10 years of age. Springdale Community Center will be closed on Sunday, March 31st in observance of Easter. And then I've had a few questions about this. Shred Day event is April 6th from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 down at the community center in the parking lot. It is citywide, but city only. You must be a resident, and you must also provide an ID demonstrating you're a resident. So it's a benefit for our community, not outside the community. So just wanted to share those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vanover.
Just piggyback, the other polling place or voting place in the city is the Higher Ground Church at the corner of Crescentville and Chesterdale. So, and then the church.
Calvary Church is also a polling location.
Calvary Church. So, just to get all of them out there.
All right, thank you. I did have one question about the BZA announcement. I know the city recently published an announcement that there was a variance request related to chickens. Is that not for this month's meeting, or is that next month? You had said that the meeting was canceled for this month?
The meeting is canceled, but I thought that there was a meeting scheduled for us to be on the same board, on the same page. But I thought that would be scheduled once we definitely have a meeting.
Okay, so we might need to check that. So refer to the city website for the BZ, the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, because I believe the city sent an announcement today. So there may be a meeting later this month.
Okay,
So
well,
let's
I'll check
take
into
a-
that.
Yeah, let's take a look at
Okay.
that after the meeting. I just don't want anyone who was watching this meeting to be sure that it was canceled, because I believe it is happening.
Okay.
And that would be the fourth Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. in these chambers. We'll get that fixed. So we'll just check the city calendar and we'll see. All right, other meetings and announcements. All right, seeing none, this is our second chance for communications from the audience. This is another chance for anyone in the audience who would like to address council for any reason. You would have 5 minutes to address us for any comments or concerns that you might have. So at this point, I'll open the floor for communications from the audience. If you'd like to come up, if you'd like to speak, all you have to do is come up to the podium, sign in, state your name and address, and then we'll start the timer.
Yeah, I'll sign this when I'm done. Good evening, everyone. My name is Turi Richardson, and I reside at 12194 Springdale Lake Drive. The reason for me coming this evening is to bring to your attention once again the pervasive and ongoing problem with litter and trash along Ray Norris Drive and also in the parking lot of Hooters. So in my opinion, or in my estimation, not only it's unseemly, unsightly, but it also presents some adverse effects to wildlife and to the environment. So I'd like to know if there are any provisions, public safety or public works. Does anyone take responsibility for that? I've done that, when I go on my walks, I take a trash bag, but I don't see that as my responsibility. I do it because I love my community. And along the same line, there's a storm drain, and that's routinely, regularly clogged with sticks and algae and things like that. And that's also an environmental, concern of mine.
And that's still on Ray Norris Drive that you're
That's
seeing
on
there?
Ray Norris.
Did administration want to respond to that? Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for coming out tonight. As any situations that come up, it's good to let us know. So between our building department in terms of property maintenance, we'll make sure that they're aware of those circumstances and those entities that have that property specifically. And then we can make sure that we're monitoring what's going on there in terms of law enforcement if there are folks that are routinely littering. I know that is an issue in a variety of places. I think you see it between Beacon and Oxford Hills on Ken Road a lot of times, folks throwing trash out there. I know I see it on Sharon Road by my house, but we will, thank you for making us aware of it so we can try to address that.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
And you should know too, there is other ordinances aside from the city work on it. The city does have an ordinance related to nuisance properties. So if it's a property owner that's not maintaining their property, like you mentioned outside of Hooters, if that's an ongoing problem, the city does have a way to get with the business owners and make sure they're maintaining their parts of the property as well. So as Mayor Hawkins said, letting us know is a good first step.
Okay.
But there's a couple of steps there. I think Mr. Gleaves had a comment too.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for coming out. And I can attest, this is my neighbor here. I have seen her physically, ever since I moved up there. She's been on walks, and she would always pick up trash. And we do it as a community anyway, but she has been paramount on doing that. And what bothers me about this whole situation is people will come into the neighborhood. There's only one way in and one way out in our neighborhood. And no one throws trash when they go up into people's homes. They throw it down on the way into the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And when I was a young man, I remember that there would be signage in certain parts of the country and even Ohio that if you littered, you'd be fined a certain amount of money. I have not seen these signs in a long, long time. I don't know if that can even happen anymore because of I don't know. But there ought to be some type of deterrent, if some signage or something that says, hey, look, we're aware that if you be aware that if you litter, you could be fined, or some deterrent of some sort. And it, like I said, it's just happens too much from streets that lead into neighborhoods, not in the actual neighborhood itself.
Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. Signs are great, but until you catch them and hit them in the pocketbook, it doesn't come to Heritage Hill. I can point out broken Molson beer bottles that have been there for weeks, beer cans. I've been out on a walk and pulled toys out of storm drain. We've had residents that wadded up the green netting that they put down when they seeded their yards and stuffed down the storm drain. It's sad people don't take pride. That's what it all comes down to. I have, a few years back, followed a contractor around the neighborhood as he was trying to throw his McDonald's breakfast bag out. And knowing the neighborhood better than he did, when he got on Cordovan Circle, he had to come right back at me. And I told him, I said, we can play this game all day. But it's a problem. It's a lack of pride and respect for the neighborhoods. And some of it is residents, some of it's not. But, unfortunately, I've got a lovely neighbor and friend that is on to me all the time about grass on sidewalks. And she's right, there are points on sidewalks that they're only 2 feet wide. But we can't, at this point, afford grass police. And we put that, I'd love to have it, but the money's not there for the litter police. If you see somebody litter, report it. get a license plate number. It's still a violation, yeah, whether a sign's up or not. But that's how it's, you know, you're going to make a dent in the situation until you change people's minds and hearts. This is the new normal that we're living with. Thank you.
Thank you. But what I'm hearing is that in this specific case, now that we know Ray Norris is an issue, administration's going to look into that site and see if there's some cleanup we can do. Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I sincerely believe that the people on the average that do this don't even know it's a violation anymore. I really do. Because it's done with the ease of not knowing that it's a violation. I don't know if we look into best practices of other cities and see what they do, but we have not, that I know of, attacked this problem or looked or researched this issue. I'm not aware of that. It's something that I think is worth doing. I believe in, if you can stop one person, it's good. I believe that the signage will work to alleviate it to some degree, but we still have to have people just paying attention to what people do. And the only reason we know is because we always walk our area, and that's why we know it's trash. We know that with the freedom and the way it's being done, it's different. It's a different approach to litter. It's just carte blanche.
All right. Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Gleaves, I wish a sign would truly stop it, but talk to the PD about speeding tickets that they issue. You know, there's a speed limit sign on Ever Street. Matter of fact, I've had for probably about 6 weeks now that radar sign down on Lead Row in the same spot. You know, when it lights up, you see them tap their brakes, but people don't. I mean, it's against the law to drive with cell phone in your hand and be texting and that, but it's still going on. Unfortunately, there's an attitude that I'm better than that. I can multitask, and we all face the price of these people. I mean, it's easy to see them.
And for what it's worth, it's not that it can go without action. If there's some specific item or program you want to research, Mr. Gleaves, that's certainly something that we could explore. So if you have an idea, we can talk about that at the next meeting in new business. If you have a proposal, or if you have an idea that in the past we've formed committees that have done deep dives and research, that's an avenue that's available to us. So maybe we can take the feedback and engage with the community, see if there's some ideas, and talk with other communities, and we can do that. So I don't want you to think that it's being brushed off. I want to address the specific concern from the resident, which it sounds like administration's got a handle on for Ray Norris. I'm curious where the specific broken Molson bottle is, because I've been looking for it for a while now. I walk Haters Hill too, but I know it's out there. So I know these things exist. So as they come forward, let us know, and we can address those issues. But Mr. Gleaves, if there's an idea or as something you want to do as a group, we can talk about the next meeting in new business. So that's available to us. All right. Thank you. So thank you for coming forward. It's obviously spurred some discussion and maybe some additional action in the future too. All right, the floor is still open for communications from the audience. If there's anyone else that would like to address council. Make sure you state your name and address.
Carol Messer, resident, 12182 Springdale Lake Drive. Thank you, council, administration, law director, those watching and listening. I do appreciate your time. I would like to start by noting that March is, among many other celebrations, which you can check out the website, goodgoodgood.com, and see all the different things we can celebrate in March, but it's also Women's History Month. And I would like to share something that one of my favorite poets, and those who know me know that that is Nikki Giovanni, who is a living local legend. And I have, she's an excellent writer, but I have written a short poem in her honor, and I'm going to read it. I remember the time of birdsong and hall. Young were watered and old were tall. Poplars high, reaching wide, willows resting near subtle tide. Listen, O city of regal trees, please be great for the least of these. And I would like to dedicate this poem to Kaya Grant, who gave her life. Thank you. We will not forget your sacrifice and service to our community. I do have just a few more points to make. I have about 3 more minutes. Thank you for being attentive and listening to what the community has to say. We appreciate the work that is being done. And I'm very grateful to this administration and the council that has considered the entire community of Springdale in visiting with the principal of Heritage Hill. She was delighted to see a community member from a different part of Springdale reaching out and asking questions and speaking in Spanish to learn the language. And today, as I drove with one of my children, we saw beautiful families walking from school to home, and the children were so well behaved and listening. And I share that because we are in the process of growing and learning and educating one another. It doesn't matter if we're 9 or 99, we get to learn together. And I just have a couple more things I'd like to say in the next minute. One would be just, again, thank you for your time. I would like to encourage all of you to consider learning the history of our local communities. I would like you to consider the balance of diversity in Springdale and how we are leading the way because of our efforts, of our working together, of our communication. And I am proud to be a part of this city. And I am proud to see the beautiful faces of the young and the old, the funny and the serious. I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful for your time, and I appreciate getting to be here. Thank you.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Messer, thank you for your tribute to Officer Grant and your positive and uplifting remarks.
Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, neighbor. Thank you very much.
All right, we're still in communications from the audience. If anyone else would like to address council, please be sure to share your name and address and sign up.
My name's Tom Cox from the Oxford Hills subdivision.
Appreciate you guys doing a great job. You guys spoke of Glen Springs earlier tonight, and if you're leaving here going up Glen Springs, and those cars are parking all in the grass, and you get these big tracks, tire tracks and that. I'm not sure if that's been addressed or not, but that's really why I came tonight.
It's a good question. Mayor Hawkins, you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Cox, thanks for coming out. That has been something that's been on our radar, and we've gone from, we have new notices, and we've gone from a phase of putting out warnings with regard to folks and where they're parking and tearing up the grass over there, to now we're to the point of ticketing. And so through the course of that enforcement change, we wanted to give people sort of a heads up at first, and now they're getting cited to court. So with the hope of that, it's going to cause some evolution and a change in behavior and get folks from parking in the grass and tearing up the roadway. But we appreciate you coming out and continue to keep us updated. If you see stuff, you can call the non-emergency line in the police department. You can call the city administration. But yes, we are aware and we're working on that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
And I have noticed a reduction over the past week or two. I feel like it's gone down. More people are right on the curb instead. Mr. Gleaves.
Yeah, Mr. Cox, thanks for coming out. When I was with the fire department this Monday, we rode over that way. They even noticed and said something to me about it, that it's not good. So if they're reporting that to me, that I'm with them, it's too evident, and we're going to take care of it. Thanks.
All right, we're still in communications in the audience. If anyone else would like to address council. Second call. And again, state your name and address. Sign in.
Hello, I'm Katie Wells. I live at 11486 Bernhardt Court. I had a couple things. First, thank you all for your service. Thanks for everything you do. We truly appreciate it. To piggyback on what Kara said, which was beautiful, it's a reminder that Springdale, again, is the most diverse elementary school in the state of Ohio. If anyone didn't know that, now you do. I would like to bring up one thing that I am concerned about. I know the swim safe discussion is not easy. I think my biggest concern was just how we got here, not necessarily having to do swim safe in general. From someone who's done a lot of hiring in my past, it seemed, and I'm just gonna throw it out there with my concern, that it was, I saw a rec pool director job posted a while back, but I really didn't see anything posted for the lifeguards for a while. And when making such hiring decisions, my concern was that there was a lot of focus on a pool director and that person who was going to hire all of the people under them, that it got to a point where there was no one for pool director and no one was doing the hiring. And that's just from what it looks like in my perspective. I don't know everything, obviously. I don't know what's happening, but I am very concerned whether it's the pool or anywhere else, if that is the way that we hire. Because when you're hiring a lot of people and you're in charge of someone on as like a pool director level and down, you should not be waiting for that person to make all of those hiring decisions. You should be taking on the slack until they are in their position. That's what a good manager does, instead of waiting. If we had a pool director hired, which would have been great, that's a lot of work for someone to do in a short amount of time. How stressful. How stressful. So that's just my concern with that, but thank you guys for making the tough decision, and I'm really glad that we have some kind of resolution with it. Thank you again for that. I would also like to just reiterate that we have a lot of people in the room today, and it's beautiful, and we're all very diverse, and there's lots of ages, and just people all over Springdale. And you don't really have to answer this. I just want everyone to think, when's the last time you invited people to a council meeting? Just think about it. When's the last time you invited people to a council meeting? When's the last time you had a discussion with your neighbors or walked and knocked on doors? I think There is progress that has been made, but I think there's a long way to go. I think that we all have the power to work together, but when there's been such an atmosphere that was created where people don't feel welcome, in order for those people to start feeling welcome again, you guys kind of have to invite them. You have to include them in conversation. Swim Safe would have been a perfect example. You might not have had a pool director, but you have a lot of moms. Teenagers are not looking for jobs on LinkedIn. They're not looking for jobs on Indeed. But if mom said, hey, get up off the couch, there's a job, they probably heard it that way. We're here to help you guys, help us. It's a team sport. That's all I have for today.
All right, thank you. I will add, I know something Mayor Hawkins alluded to earlier in the discussion about Swim Safe was this idea of a September feedback session. I'm not sure if that got lost in it. I'm not sure how much discussion there was on that. There'll be more information on that in the future. But I think that's one of those things that you talked about where we're trying to invite that feedback from the community. And that'll be an open-ended session where people have the opportunity to share whatever concerns they have rather than necessarily a council meeting that's always at a set time. So that's something that Mayor Hawkins is spearheading that I think speaks to that. It takes time to get that stuff going. So I certainly applaud that effort as well, and we'll participate. I think we'll get a good opportunity there to do some of that outreach you talked about.
Thank you for that. The only other thing I have really quick is something great you could do that would be really easy and probably only take about 30 minutes of payroll hours is schedule out on Facebook a post that just says, hey, you're invited.
Yeah. All right, Mayor Hawkins, did you have a comment there?
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Wells, I appreciate the comments. You know, from my perspective, that you and anybody else is always welcome to come to the city, whether you're a resident, whether you work in the city, whether you're driving through and just want to see what's going on in Springdale. But, you know, we'll continue to do things to make sure folks feel that they are welcome to come and be involved and engaged. And I won't usually speak for other elected officials up here, but I think you could probably call any of these folks and they're going to be happy to talk to anybody about any questions that come up.
Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Wells, I want to answer a good question that you just brought up. When is the last time you invited somebody to a council meeting? Tonight. Yeah. There are some people out here in this audience tonight that I invited, and I'm glad that they came here, and I want you to keep coming back because the only way we can fix some issues is by being here, and I've talked to every last one of them. I'm going to continue to do it because this is what it's all about. We have to work together. We work for you, and in order for us to work for you, you have to give us the tools to work. So please continue to come back.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Wells, Katie. You know, when I decided to run, one of the big things that I was really looking for is to opening those lines of communication. And I know we've had those conversations before, whether it be prior to this, but we want to hear from people, at least I do. You know, I've reached out to a number of residents, and I love hearing feedback. And again, like Mayor said, I can't speak for all the elected officials, but I am chair of the Public Relations Committee, which in the past hasn't had a huge presence in things. But when I looked up what the definition of public relations was, it was how, I can't remember exactly, but how you are dealing with the public, the community. And we clearly had needed to work on that for a long time. So I look forward to many more conversations and hearing from all of our residents. So thank you.
All right. Communications to the audience is still open. Second call. And again, when you get up there, if you could state your name and address.
Nate Messer, 12182 Springdale Lake Drive. Most of my questions are about, really just two, about Swim Safe. It's First question was, is it just a one-year contract? That's what I thought it was. Just making sure. And is there going to be any changes, like major or minor changes about with SwimSafe? Because either like changing the hours or because I think it was last meeting you did say something about, I think it was holidays and the weekends, it might close earlier on the weekends. So I was just wondering, just double checking.
Administration, did you want to respond, or Mayor Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. So it's basically going to be the same aquatics experience and services that are provided. There is going to be a change, closing a little bit earlier in the evening. And the basic reason for that is our rec staff is only going to be open for so long. And so someone's going to have to stay back a little bit later past their normal time because the pool will be open, but we don't want to keep them back for 2 hours beyond the closing time. We want to make sure that we have rec staff that can shut things down and make sure everything's locked up and secure at the end of the day. But beyond that, everything's going to be pretty much as it has been. That's the plan.
Thank you.
And you had heard the response on the contract. It's what council agreed to was a one-year contract with the option to renew for an additional year.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. All right. The floor is still open. If anyone else would like to address council for any reason? Second call. Third and final call. Communications to the audience is now closed, and we'll move on to item 13, updates on legislation still development, as well as recap on legislative items. Mr. Jacobs, so those are both yours, so in the order that you find most effective.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 1 was addressed by Ordinance 08-2024, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with SwimSafe Pool Management Incorporated and declaring an emergency. That passed with 5 affirmative votes. Item 2 was addressed by Ordinance 10-2024, an ordinance removing special assessments previously levied for certain public improvements in the city of Springdale, Ohio, in cooperation with the Suburban Communities Energy Special Improvement District, the Shakely Project, and declaring an emergency. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 3 was addressed by Ordinance 11-2024, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing agreement with respect to the Glen Springs Fuel Station Project and the execution of ancillary development-related documents and declaring an emergency. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. And item 4 was addressed with Ordinance 12-2024, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property associated with the Northland Boulevard Reconstruction Project and declaring an emergency, and that passed with 7 affirmative votes. All other matters are forthcoming. Anything from administration?
And we're still expecting to do police department introductions at the next meeting? Mr.
Correct, yes. I do have one bit to add to. I know we're working on some contract review from the Ohio Department of Development regarding some a grant award that 2 grant awards that we received for energy efficiency upgrades at the municipal building and community center.
And we expect to see those at the next meeting?
Correct.
All right. That's it. All that's before us is item 15. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.